Is there a correlation between budget cuts, fewer police officers and a spike in crime?
I think that it's about...
With the grooming gang storm overwhelming us with a barrage of right-wing voices, including many from the Tory party, I think it's very important to revisit this moment when Boris Johnson, months before becoming Prime Minister, said the £60 million spent on the child abuse investigations was SPAF'd up the wall.
Keeping numbers high on the streets is certainly important, but the question is where you spend the money and where you deploy the officers. And one comment I would make is I think an awful lot of money, an awful lot of police time now goes into these historic offences and all this malarkey. And, £60 million I saw was being spaffed up the wall on, some investigation into historic child abuse and all this kind of thing. What on earth is that going to do to protect the public now? What the people want is to see officers out on the streets doing what they signed up to do.
Boris quickly backpedalled on his views in this interview on ITV with Joe Pike.
You'll know the difficult time we've had in Rotherham with child sexual abuse, and you were in Rotherham just a couple of weeks ago. You talked earlier this year about money being spaffed up the wall investigating child abuse. Do you regret that comment?
Well, I think it's very, very important that we investigate historic child sex abuse and we investigate child sex abuse.
He's totally contradicting himself.
I think you would concede, and in Rotherham, I completely agree, there was an appalling epidemic, and it was right that should be tackled, and there should be the fullest and most thorough possible investigation. There have been other investigations where I think the investigation into Field Marshal Lord Bramall and...
but do you understand that victims of child sexual abuse, survivors of child sexual abuse, will hear you using the word spaffed, which means ejaculated, Prime Minister. Is ejaculated money up the wall investigating paedophiles the right way to talk about this sort of...
These are your definitions, and you've chosen to use this language.
You use the word. In a radio studio, on video.
Well, I wasn't referring in that context to investigations taking place in Rotherham, and I think that...
And do you regret those comments, Prime Minister?
I think it's very important that funding is spent on frontline policing. Even you would concede that some of the historic investigations into child abuse, such as those directed by Nick with the connivance of Tom Watson and the Labour Party, were not good uses of public money.
Perhaps Joe Swinson,
perhaps you don't think that. But
Joe Swinson says you have an empathy bypass. Why do you find it so difficult to say sorry?
Well, I'm very happy to apologise for things that I've got wrong.
But being a total narcissist, he never believes he does anything wrong. Click here for Robert Jenrick being totally skewered by Nick Robinson.